We'll have a quick break, 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Do come back. We've got a great stage. Thank you so much. See you very soon. 10:40. We start the next session. Can we have you? He's running around. I don't even see him. So thanks to Amit for enabling everything that you see going on over here. Having said, Alex Lee, the stage is yours. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Let's get this.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Lee. I'm a strategy associate at the Human Rights Foundation. The Human Rights Foundation is based in the United States. We promote and protect human rights in authoritarian countries all across the world. I was born and I grew up in the United States, and it's my first time in India, so thank you everyone for the warm welcome. It's been a lot of fun. So the title of this talk is Human Rights in the Age of Surveillance Capitalism, right? So I just wanted to go over real quick, what is surveillance capitalism? When you think of the word surveillance capitalism, it combines two words, right? Surveillance and capitalism. Surveillance is somewhat more of a negative word, right? It means someone is watching over you, they're monitoring you, they're seeing everything that you're doing, right? That's surveillance. Capitalism in the Bitcoin crowd is probably more of a positive word. Capitalism is an economic system where private enterprises, so private people, private businesses, control money, control capital, in contrast to more socialistic systems where the government controls the money and controls the capital, right? But when you combine these two words together, you get surveillance capitalism. And surveillance capitalism is kind of like, it reminds me a lot of like the UPI payment system here, right? It's a system where you combine surveillance and capitalism, and companies control and monetize your data, right? They collect information on how you use your money, and then they surveil it, and then use that to monitor you, control you, or just sell you better ads, right? And surveillance capitalism is a major threat to human rights, because if governments and in some senses private corporations can see everything that you do with your money, they can control you. Right? If they can control your money, then they can control your freedom. They can control what you buy with your money, who you send money to, who you interact with, and that in turn can affect your freedom of association, right? If the government can block you from donating to a protest that they don't like, or if the government can block you from buying things that, like Bitcoin, right? Then they can exert total control over you personally. I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts I had from my first time in India. I landed at the airport and I wanted to order an Uber, right? So I tried to connect to the airport Wi-Fi, and the first thing it says is, please put your Indian phone number to connect to the airport Wi-Fi. And I'm like, okay. Or you can go to like a little KYC booth to get a voucher after they scan your passport to connect to your Wi-Fi. I'm like, okay. This is not a very good start to my journey in India if connecting to the Wi-Fi at the airport is this troublesome. I get an Uber, I go to the hotel, sleep, then I want a SIM card, right? I want a SIM card to be able to use my phone without paying expensive roaming rates. I go to the SIM card store with my good friend Paco, and they require KYC for SIM card. I have to give them my passport. Apparently they take a photo of you, they scan your fingerprint, just to buy a SIM card. I'm like, man, this is a very interesting country. Yes, so I feel like India, in many senses, has almost become accustomed to KYC, right? KYC, getting your passport, getting your personal information seems to be very normal here, and they're normalizing it. I try to buy some coconut water after walking around, seeing the beautiful sights, and all the vendors there have this little QR code, UPI payment system. Okay, great, it's digital, it's cashless, it's convenient. But what are the downsides for that supposed convenience, right? If you think about it, every time you make a payment via UPI, it's being monitored, it's being recorded, right? So the government can obviously know how much money you have, who you're sending it to, and it may not be a problem if you're just buying coconut water. It may not be a problem if you're donating to a popular Hindu temple, but what if you're donating to a protest movement, right? What if you're donating to protest organizers or protest leaders? Or what if you're making payments not for coconut water, but for some other things the government may not like, right? Like Bitcoin. So that can be a huge problem. And those are the downsides that I saw in India so far. So let me talk about the positives, right? Love the food, it's amazing. I wish that the restaurants here accepted Bitcoin, but none of the restaurants here accepted Bitcoin so far. So that's a good spot for change. Very welcoming people, even though I don't have a UPI, I could not use the UPI payment system. I always had an Indian friend who could help me pay for me with UPI, and then I could also give him some Bitcoin to support the circular economy here and get more Bitcoin into India. So that's good. So going back to the topic of human rights in the age of surveillance capitalism, I don't think a lot of us have really thought, I don't know if many Indians have thought about the grave threat of CBDCs, right? Central bank digital currencies, and the grave threat that the supposed convenient cashless payment systems like UPI pose to human rights in India. Everyone I talk to seemed to be annoyed to be accepting cash, right? It's like, I give them cash and they're like, oh, point to the QR code. I'm like, look at me, I don't have the QR code because I just came here yesterday and I don't have an Indian bank account. You know, I as an American, you know, if I wanted to, I could probably easily set up an Indian bank account and set up, you know, an Indian phone number, but it takes a lot of work, right? And in India, I really felt that there's a culture of convenience where every time I wanted to make a payment in cash, they're like, oh, do you do Google Pay? Do you do this pay, that pay, QR code? I'm like, no, unfortunately. And if you think about it, if you use an app like Google Pay, right, you need a Google account. So now you're giving Google access to your payment history. You're giving Google access to your monetary account. You're giving Google the power to do this and turn off your Gmail account and then turn off access to your own money. Have we really thought about the privacy and security implications of that? A lot of times, it seems like if I'm in the United States, right, or if I'm in other countries, people are happy to take cash. They like cash because of the privacy of cash, right? They like cash because it's untraceable. The government doesn't know where you got your cash from. You can make a payment. Nobody else other than you and the recipient of the payment knows that this payment has occurred. That is the complete opposite when you use a CBDC or if you use UPI, right, in the age of surveillance capitalism. The government knows exactly how much money you have, exactly how much money you sent to the recipient, and exactly what the recipient, how much money the recipient has. And to switch a little bit to the threat of surveillance capitalism, I just wanted to touch upon a couple short stories, right? So my family's from China, right? In China, the surveillance capitalism has just turned the country into a dystopian hellhole. It's like, you can't do anything without the government knowing. If you buy a train ticket, right, you have to have KYC, and then the government instantly knows the destination of where you're gonna take your train. And if you're buying a train ticket, for example, to attend a famous protest, what has happened is the government just does that and cancels your train ticket, does not let you leave the town to go attend a protest. If you try to buy a flight and you're on their undesirable list, right, they can just block you from buying flights and prevent you from leaving, right? So we really want to move away from an age of surveillance capitalism, and Bitcoin completely destroys surveillance capitalism because it cannot be easily mass surveilled. It cannot be easily traced. If you buy Bitcoin peer-to-peer like many of you do here, it cannot be, you buy Bitcoin peer-to-peer, it's private, right? The government doesn't know where you got your Bitcoin from. They can't link your Bitcoin account to your payment. So I'm over my time, so I just wanted to say thank you and hand it over to Yohan, and look forward to speaking with you more. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Yohan Tengra, and thank you. Thanks. My claim to fame of late has been being sued by one of the biggest billionaires in the world. His name is Adar Poonawala, and he's the guy who made the Covishield vaccine that, I don't know, probably most of you in the room have been coerced into or have taken out of ignorance. So if you haven't researched the vaccines, I encourage looking into that. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about surveillance capitalism and Bitcoin and my journey as an activist and how Bitcoin resonated with me. So I'm going to take you guys through a little bit of my story with respect to how I woke up to Bitcoin many years ago. So I just was college-going teen, questioning reality, questioning life, and started looking into a lot of so-called fringe subjects like conspiracies and the New World Order and those kind of things back in 2015. And I was researching a lot about the problems that are like taking place in the world. So I got to know about the entire fiat monetary system and how fiat's basically enslaving us and taking away a portion of our wealth without us really consenting to it. And there's been a whole long history with respect to tyrants and kings, like intentionally wanting the money supply to be that way so that they can increase it without the people's consent and use that excess wealth to start wars and like build their empires and scale up their tyrannical infrastructure. So getting aware about the financial side of things and with respect to how governments are really enslaving us on that front, I was looking for solutions, and that's when I came across Bitcoin sometime in 2016, 2017. And just getting to know about the fact that our world is not run by the people who we're told run our world. Like most people believe that our governments control what goes on in our country, but the real control actually goes much beyond them. Like even if you just go one level above government, you'll come across people like Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum, which have kind of become popular now because of the things they're pushing and the entire COVID situation and everything. But getting to know about Bitcoin and also seeing like real world use cases for that as a freedom oriented person, as someone who loves liberty, was really inspiring for me. And that's what really got me to adopt Bitcoin myself and gave me the intention that whatever following I have or whatever people listen to me, like I always want to promote Bitcoin so I can get more people to start using it. Julian Assange's case was like really inspiring for me because he's someone who actually exposed US government war crimes and like basically just went against the entire state apparatus in America, and everyone came after him. The credit card companies, the bank accounts. Like Julian Assange was a really early example of what happened to the Canadian truckers in the entire vaccine era. So, I mean, I came across his case earlier, and then just as time passed, because the entire like vaccine mandates discussion and bodily autonomy resonates with me so much. Looking at how the Canadian truckers were treated, for those of you who are not familiar, in Canada there were big protests that were held against vaccine mandates, and a lot of truckers actually came out to the streets, and the government targeted their bank accounts and basically like financially captured them in a way where they could not finance their protests, and that's where Bitcoin really helped them a lot. So, I mean, for me, it's been a no-brainer. Like Alex, spoke about China and how they have the entire social credit system. So he gave an example, like he was just hypothetically speaking about how the government can stop you from going to protest. But something like that actually happened in China. So they have their COVID pass, and some of those people are actually going to protest because the bank accounts like confiscated their wealth, and they were going to protest outside the bank. And the government actually didn't want them to do that, so they actually just turned their COVID pass from green to red, even though they were like, they tested negative, So that's just one example of how governments can use this surveillance infrastructure that's, creeping up all around us every day in order to kind of track down on our financial liberty. I just wanted to mention that it's very difficult for me to like consolidate my thoughts in a 10-minute discussion because typically like I did a seminar on Bitcoin and CBDCs and the Great Reset like a couple of months back, and that went on for like 8-9 hours. So if you guys are like interested in understanding how Bitcoin's really like a tool that can help us fight larger kind of conspiracies that are taking place, I'd encourage you all to go watch that. But basically there are really powerful like financial powers and families in the world that want to create a world government and enslave all of us. So if you see, like, I'd recommend researching Whitney Webb's work. She gave an interesting talk at a Bitcoin conference a couple of months back, and she was talking about this initiative of the World Economic Forum called the WEFPAC, wherein a lot of these powerful like central banks and powerful commercial banks and big business houses in America, like they're all getting together in order to draft policy framework and make changes at an international level, wherein they want to criminalize encryption, they want to like go after Bitcoin, they're specifically targeting Bitcoin in that, and they're also targeting like disinformation in the name of cybercrime. So just for example, like if you research the IMF, they've called for internet search history to be tied to our financial transaction records and stuff. The eventual goal for them seems to be to usher in central bank digital currencies and actually use that in a way where they can easily just shut you off if you go against the system in any way. Like this is not even conjecture anymore. We can just see it with the example of the Canadian truckers, but this is something that's meant to expand. And I'd also recommend researching the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the World Economic Forum. These are the people who are like really calling the shots above the government. So the Gates Foundation actually has big partnerships with the Reserve Bank of India, and they are the ones who are actually like steering this entire expansion of UPI and CBDCs that we're seeing rolling out right now. Like Gates was recently in our country, I think, a couple of months back, and he went and met with the RBI head and a lot of other stakeholders. And if you just research Gates and what Gates is into, he's all about surveillance and control and eugenics and wanting to reduce the population and controlling people's finances and putting up satellites that surveil the entire planet. So I know this is not like a Bitcoin only talk that I'm giving, but my intention always is to kind of show people the political reality and the situation that's really going on. And in that context, we need to understand how Bitcoin's acting as a tool that can help us get our freedom. So recently I've been censored off YouTube as well. So I mean, I'm just giving you guys examples. Like it won't be long until you will be saying something that the government, that goes against the government in some way. And once they have this infrastructure wherein they get the CBDCs, they crack down on Bitcoin, which they're openly saying, like you can go and research the Bank for International Settlements. This is the head apex central bank of the central banks. And they've been saying as to how, it's only CBDCs and they don't want private cryptocurrencies that they don't control. Because this is something they've been working towards for a very long time. If you study the financial elite, they really want to create like a global financial infrastructure wherein there's only one currency that they control, and it's total surveillance and like financial censorship if you disagree with them. So yeah, it's a lot of topics that people need to get educated about in a true sense. Bitcoin is a solution, but then if we stay unaware of political realities and what's going on all around us and naively think that just using Bitcoin is somehow gonna solve like larger problems, definitely Bitcoin adoption needs to scale, and I'm doing my bit in kind of helping to do that with whatever following I have. But also on a larger level, like people need to become aware about these hidden power structures who really want to crack down hard on Bitcoin in the future, and we need to organize against those kind of things as well. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. If you guys want to like look into my stuff more, you can check out Anarchy for Freedom. Thank you so much.
We have Alex joining on stage with Yohan for a quick back and forth discussion. Surreal, guys. Absolutely fantastic to see the both of you together, knowing the kind of work that you're doing in your individual spheres of influence. Fantastic. Take it away.
So Alex, yeah, tell me, like, have you experienced anything happen in your personal life where the government's like cracked down on you and Bitcoin's helped you out in some way?
Thankfully, I live in the United States, so I have not had any personal attacks on myself yet, and I hopefully don't have any in the future. But I have many Chinese friends. I lived in China for 4 years, from 5th to 9th grade, and many of them have definitely experienced a lot of problems after speaking out, even mildly, against the Chinese government, right? Some of my friends, they've had their social media accounts completely blocked and deleted just for liking or retweeting posts that are critical of the Chinese government. If you criticize the Chinese government, they can turn off your WeChat Pay. WeChat Pay and Alipay are kind of like the UPI of China. They're a cashless digital payment system. And if the government can turn off access to your WeChat Pay or Alipay, it can basically completely kill your online financial life, right? Because it makes it very hard for you to even buy some soap on Amazon or the Chinese Amazon, right? You can't make payments easily to people everywhere. So definitely, I've had friends who've experienced a lot of hardship after speaking out against the Chinese government. Some have even had to flee China, so.
Damn, that's really interesting to hear. I also wanted to share like two things I forgot to mention. So there's this holistic healthcare practitioner called Dr. Mercola. He has one of the most visited natural health websites in the world. and he was recently targeted by and debanked by his bank for basically like having his opinions and whatever he shared so far, because he's been exposing the entire Great Reset agenda and like teaching people how to take control of their own health. In Britain recently, we had Nigel Farage, who's like big conservative politician there, and it came out that the Coutts Bank actually censored his bank account. Earlier, they were trying to make it look like he didn't have the appropriate balance, which is why they shut it. But eventually, it came out that they actually censored him because of his political views. So we are already living in an age where we don't have to kind of, make conjectures or have theories about these things, because people are already being censored just for having certain views. And I really don't think it'll be long before the government starts targeting, like smaller people. They're going after the big fish first and targeting them to set an example. And then like eventually I think they'll just make the infrastructure such where the targeting itself is done by algorithms and AI. So if you just like post something, maybe something gets flagged and then the CBDC just gets cut from your wallet. So we're looking at a very dark dystopian future, I believe. What are your thoughts on that, dude?
Yeah, the world is becoming more dystopian. Right now, many of us aren't aware of CBDCs, but just to let you know, and I might sound like a genius in 5 years, but it doesn't take much brain power to know this. CBDCs are coming, right? Governments are pushing for CBDCs. And what CBDCs are, if you don't know what a CBDC is, it's a central bank digital currency. Basically, it's money issued directly by the central bank. So in this case, it'd be the RBI in India. And instead of, imagine, I'm not sure what popular Indian banks there are, right? Imagine instead of the bank, like one of the many hundreds of banks in India being able to turn off your money. Imagine if the central government could directly, bam, your money is gone, right? And obviously, it completely destroys privacy. The central bank will know everything you do. It completely destroys freedom because they can immediately, right, just ban you from buying things they don't like, donating to causes you don't like, the government doesn't like, banning you from supporting protesters, right? Banning you from buying Bitcoin. And this obviously will also come with governments trying to ban cash. They're gonna try to ban cash because cash is private, cash is freedom money. The government doesn't know what you're using cash for. They don't like it. Obviously, India has had a history of demonetization, of getting rid of the 1,000 rupee notes, if I'm correct. And the government's going to try to ban cash. They're going to push CBDCs. They're going to try to control us and enslave us through that method. And at the Human Rights Foundation, we're working on a CBDC tracker. So we're going to be working on researching and exposing the dramatic human rights violations and the threats that CBDCs pose to human rights. So watch out for that in the upcoming next couple of months. And just to add a note of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the opposite of CBDC, right? CBDC is control, CBDC is slavery, CBDC is total mass surveillance, and Bitcoin is freedom money. Bitcoin is private money, right? Bitcoin gives you control of your own money, which is the exact opposite of a CBDC.
You can listen to Augustin Carsons. He's the head of the Bank for International Settlements. He had a clip out, I think, a couple of months back where he was comparing cash to CBDC. And he was saying that in cash, we don't know, like, where you're spending your money or who you're giving your money to and the trail of that. But with the CBDC, they'll know exactly who you're giving your money to and then have the ability to kind of censor you as well if you really go against them. And speaking about demonetization and the entire surveillance infrastructure in India, like if you just research the Gates Foundation, you'll find their role in the Aadhaar program. Like the entire Aadhaar program can be accessed by CIA spies. There's investigative journalists who've written pieces on that as to how Aadhaar was really like incubatory product of CIA and French intelligence. You can go and read up more on that. Even demonetization, like there's a CIA front called USAID. They were heavily involved in lobbying with our Indian Ministry of Finance in order to push that whole thing. It was like a pre-planned operation they did to discourage people from using cash and go more towards digital payments. Funnily enough, they actually talk about how demonetization did less to push people towards digital payments, and the entire pandemic did much more to push that. So definitely we're seeing more of a trend where the governments want us to use UPI, or like in the near future they'll want us to use CBDCs, because it's not just from a control aspect, I believe, but even from an ability to just rampantly inflate the money supply and just print how much ever they want. At least cash acts as some kind of restriction, wherein the amount they print has to be in proportion to the amount of cash they have in reserve, and they can print multiple amounts, but still the cash acts as some kind of small barrier. But once cash is fully out, then you just have like central bank money, and they can literally inflate the money supply how much ever they want and steal from you that way, if not steal from you directly. So yeah, man.
I just want to say that I'm going to touch upon some of the sadder and more depressing parts of India, but also talk about why I see massive hope and hope for the future of India. Right, in India, like I touched upon, it seems like there's a culture of KYC, you need ID for everything. It's going rapidly cashless. Cash is not as widely accepted. There's the UPI payment system where everybody accepts UPI, and the government can see all the payments you're doing and all the payments you're making. But there's immense hope for India, right? I see a very strong gold culture here, the original best form of self-custody. Instead of using the scam fiat money system, you can have a gold, a hard currency, a hard money that the government cannot just easily print more of. And there's immense technological innovation going on in India, right? I'm here in Bengaluru, I see all the tech companies, I see all the very smart and inspiring entrepreneurs, innovators, creators who are trying to build a better future for India. So even though India is rapidly going cashless, even though there's a UPI system, I have a lot of hope that India can be a global hub for Bitcoin in the future, right? So just convincing people, I don't know if you, I'm sure there's many smart people here who are working on it. Hopefully HRF can do everything we can to help of pushing people towards freedom money, right? Towards Bitcoin, towards money that the government does not control, that you control yourself.
Yeah, I think we all should do our bit in pushing Bitcoin adoption as much as possible.
We'll open up the floor, guys. I'm getting whispers. See, look at the hands go up.
No, when you talk about the Great Reset and people at the top calling the shots, people with a lot of power, you think of BlackRock and Klaus Schwab and people like that. So, yeah. I mean, so how do you think this Bitcoin ETF, BlackRock applying for Bitcoin ETF plays out? What are the ways in which it could go wrong for Bitcoin? Like, what is the worst case scenario?
I guess I'll go first. So if you not hear the question is about the BlackRock ETF and how that may affect Bitcoin in a positive or negative way. I think it's obviously two-sided, right? So the positive way is that it'll create massive capital allocation, make it much easier for institutions and individuals and private money managers to have price exposure to Bitcoin. They're not gonna actually have Bitcoin, they're gonna have paper Bitcoin, an IOU that says they have some Bitcoin on some server somewhere, paper Bitcoin, but that can help increase capital inflows into Bitcoin. So hopefully that'll help some people buy Bitcoin. The obvious negatives, which is that you're giving people access to paper Bitcoin, right? It's an IOU. Thankfully, Bitcoin, we're a proof of work system. Owning more coins does not give you more control over the network. Just because you have a lot of Bitcoin doesn't mean you suddenly can change the rules and change the monetary supply and become more influential. This is in contrast to many other altcoins out there, proof of stake systems, where if you have more coins, you absolutely have more influence and control over the network, right? And you can see that with other altcoins in the space. So just a short answer, we have to be wary. We just have to continue our education that, hey, you can buy the Bitcoin ETF if you want. If you want to buy it, you can, but you're not getting real Bitcoin. You're getting a paper IOU. It's not self-custody, right? You have to trust BlackRock's custodian to actually hold the coins for you. So hopefully I encourage obviously people to self-custody, to hold their own coins, not your keys, not your coins. And we continue education of self-custody to avoid rug pulls and avoid people and custodians stealing your coins.
I definitely wouldn't trust BlackRock with having an ETF and them just guaranteeing that the Bitcoin is there doing its thing. So I think firstly, it's going to be incredibly unlikely that an ETF does get approved. This might not be a popular opinion, but just looking at the G20 and even what I spoke about with the WEFPAC and if you see the World Economic Forum's kind of deputy second guy under Klaus, he gave a lecture earlier this year where he was talking about how before 2025 there'll be this huge cyber event and then that will serve as a pretext in order for them to get some kind of cyber patriot act, like 9/11 was a false flag, and then they use that to get the Patriot Act in and restrict people's freedom. So as far as I've been studying the globalist agenda, they really want to get internet passports and like go after freedom-oriented technologies. So I really think that it's unlikely that it does get approved. In the event that it does, like I'll echo some of his points. Even I'm all about self-custody and pushing people towards having their own kind of like non-custodial wallets and stuff. So as long as people have that, then they have direct control over their Bitcoin, and then they can decide how they want to spend it. And having like your Bitcoin parked in a BlackRock ETF or an exchange is just like a negative for the freedom-minded people in the space. So we should always be, if something like that happens, it'll be good for the price. But as far as like us actually using Bitcoin as a freedom-oriented tool, that needs to happen on our own wallets for sure.
Yeah, I had one question. So with regards to KYC, do you think it is entirely bad, or are there pros and cons to KYC? Like from what I understand, KYC was started as a means to prevent people from doing illegal activities, preventing them from buying weapons, drugs, funding terrorist organizations. So would you think it would be better if we entirely turn off KYC, or would we still need some KYC in some form?
So I'll take this first. So I'm not even a libertarian. I'm an anarcho-capitalist. So I believe that the government shouldn't exist altogether. So coming from that perspective, I believe that the state shouldn't be there and everything should be provided by the market. And then KYC can be an opt-in thing. If some business requires to like verify you, there'll probably be like open source standards for doing KYC. I'm against this kind of centralized government-induced KYC, especially like biometric-oriented KYC like Aadhaar. The way in which they want to scale it up is they want to collect our DNA and our facial recognition and fuse it into a digital ID, and like it'll just turn into like this panopticon Orwellian nightmare with the way the current KYC framework is going. So definitely like we need to go off that and explore alternative market-based KYC solutions rather than this state-enforced tyrannical KYC that we see creeping up right now.
Just to touch upon that a bit, right? Like, that's the pernicious and dangerous influence of government control. Once you've been regulated and controlled by the government for a while, you become used to it, and then freedom becomes scary, and then you're thinking like, oh, like, what if we live in a world where you don't have to do KYC to buy a SIM card? Maybe that's bad. Maybe they'll support terrorism or criminal activities. But you have to remember, in most of the world, you can just buy a SIM card by giving somebody cash and they'll give you a SIM card and you plug in your phone and you can go on Google and watch YouTube, right? It's like, obviously KYC is important for rooting out. If you're spending like, if you're transferring millions of dollars, if you're engaging in large sums of money, as a business, I would want to do KYC just to make sure that like, hey, if you don't pay me, I know who you are so I can sue you and get my money back, right? So there is some minimal amount of KYC that I think is necessary, but it should be as minimally intrusive as possible. It should not require me, like, I have no reason why I need to give my fingerprint to buy a SIM card, right? Like, you scan my passport, okay, you already know who I am, where I'm from. Why do you need to take a photo of me? Why do you need to scan my fingerprint? Why do you even need to scan my passport, right? Like, I don't think that's necessary, because if I wanted to, I could buy a foreign eSIM and do roaming in India and browse the internet completely KYC free. It's just more expensive. So to answer your answer in a short way, we need minimally intrusive KYC, preferably no KYC whenever possible. In some circumstances, KYC is necessary, and in those circumstances, it should be as minimally intrusive as possible and reduce friction.
Hi, my name is Sushil. Alex made an observation earlier that Indians seem to be very comfortable, if not even welcoming, of KYC. Unfortunately, this is true. And against this background, one of the reasons I've come here today from Vizag, apart from the fact that I'm a believer and I'm going to get to meet all you interesting people, is to reassure myself that I'm not crazy for always wanting to use a VPN, that I'm not crazy for using a location changer in my mobile app, and that I'm not crazy for not wanting to use my real name in all my social media accounts. So the point that I'm trying to make is, it's also a request to all of you in this space who are actively engaged in this space, is along with your Bitcoin evangelism, it would be nice if you hand in hand also educated people as to the dangers of KYC and go one step further. It's not just tell them what they're doing is wrong, but also give them solutions. Like give them resources that they could use. Like there are eSIMs that you can download, eSIMs that you can buy, pay for with SATs and download into your mobile without KYC. So if it's not just telling them that what they're doing is wrong, but also showing them alternatives. So yeah, that's just the point that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Alex, Yohan, thank you so much. I see hands going up all over the hall. We have them the entire day. Thanks for your understanding, audience. For us to keep on moving along. Great session, guys. Love the pin drop silence. Thunderous applause now. Come on.
Thank
Alex,
you.
Yohan,
Thank you.
Thank you.